Hey guys, Marsengan here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so I'm making this speculation video based on something that Minato brought up on the most recent episode of the podcast. Shout out to him. Somebody did actually mention in my second channel stream last night where we were playing some Demon Souls. Do go check out the second channel if you ever wanted to hang out in other streams and stuff where I'm playing games that are not Dokkan. Do go check that out. The link is in the description. But somebody mentioned in there that Truth had mentioned this as well, I think on Twitter. And it is kind of funny because those two do have their dynamic of going back and forth at each other. But I definitely heard Minato mention it first, so shout out to him. But we're going to speculate on the idea that Rose is going to be released as the part 2 on JP for the rest of their celebration before Golden Week, instead of a new yellow coin LR. Now, this might seem like a familiar topic, right? We discussed not even that long ago in a similar kind of video the idea of Rose being released as the next Dokkan Fest on JP instead of Topo. And of course that did not come to pass. However, we did talk about in that video that would create a kind of weird situation where when this celebration released on Global, there was no part 2 LR, whereas this March celebration for JP does usually have a part 2 LR because of the way it fits into the schedule on Global, which we are going to talk about coming up here soon. But Rose's celebration fits in kind of nicely in this gap between now and Golden Week instead of a part 2 LR, because of course Rose did not have a part 2 LR. His banner was definitely very interesting. I think this will open up the banner in a separate link. Dokkan info, sadly we were talking about it on the stream this morning, the Dokkan wiki, which we've used as a resource for years now, has fallen off super hard, unfortunately. It's sad to see. Like, a lot of the pages just don't get updated anymore, like the celebrations and the timeline and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff we can't get up on the wiki for these newer celebrations that we would have done in the past. But one of the big things is this banner comes out, and this banner was not like the Dokkan Fest banners that we've been seeing recently, in the sense that we didn't have a banner unit for Rose. And it was it 10 featured units? Yeah, 10 featured units in total. So in a way, it was kind of like a yellow coin banner, right? We had 3 LRs. Well, not 3, sorry. Goku Black was the new unit, and then 2 LRs. So you got the 3 big ticket featured units, and then a bunch of like non-Dokkan Fest. I guess, to be fair, Vegeta and Trunks were on there too, so it is 3 LRs. But yeah, so an interesting kind of banner. It is more similar to a yellow coin banner than it is to a Dokkan Fest banner, right? Because not all of the units featured are Dokkan Fest exclusives. So it's kind of interesting. And this fits the format instead of getting a yellow coin LR banner. And then as we look down the rest of the celebration, like we got the Dokkan event, we got the support banner, and then realistically in terms of like new content, there wasn't a crazy amount of stuff, but the big thing that we got that was pretty surprising, of course, for Global, especially considering all of this stuff was Global first, and as of now still is, of course, we got the Extreme Z battle for the STR Kefla, as well as the sub-EZAs for all the Universe 6 units. Now, we've seen on JP with this celebration, right, Topo's release, we've got the EZA for the INT Gotenks, the AGL Gotenks, like all of these Universe 6 EZAs would be further buffs for Topo's team, tournament participants in general, even things like fused fires, right? Like the idea of using Kefla with her EZA and INT Gotenks with his EZA on the same team is going to be super fun. They're on a bunch of teams like Super Saiyans and stuff like that. That's going to be really interesting. So all of that stuff coming out for JP would be very, very good. And you got to remember that one of the big goals that we're kind of working towards, remember the date that we've been given, I say the date, but the time frame we've been given is summer 2024, is that the games are going to be syncing up. So anytime, like this is why they dropped Rose kind of as a Global first in the middle of a bunch of other stuff, because Global didn't get Rose instead of something else that we should have got, whereas JP at some point will have to get Rose instead of getting something new that Global doesn't have. So this creates the opportunity for Global to actually catch up a little bit, right? So now the interesting thing is, how does this affect the timeline, because there's an interesting change that this would bring specifically to the global schedule that I think would be very, very interesting. So if we switch over to the wiki view here and we look at the timeline, this is basically just to show how the month of June is going to look for global based on previous years. So once the anniversary came to an end, the last part of the anniversary, of course, being the EZA for the Buhan and STR Vegito, which is big EZAs. I know everyone's looking forward to those. We then went into the first Dokkan Fest after the anniversary for JP, which was the Frieza. Now, if we take a look at the previous year, actually, I think I brought up the... Yeah, this is the June one. So if we take a look back to the previous year, remember that the first Dokkan Fest after the anniversary was the STR 17s. And then if we go over to Global and take a look at... It actually starts at the end of May, right after. This is all the Golden Week stuff. And then at the end of May, that's where we got the STR 17s, right? So this is how the timeline for Global shapes up before the anniversary. We always get the first Dokkan Fest that JP got after the anniversary in May as the kind of final build-up towards the anniversary. So this time slot will be the AGL Frieza. And then, yeah, going back to June, going back to the March thing over here, we obviously have Saiyan Day after the 17s. Then we get into all of the Golden Week stuff. And then the first Dokkan Fest of April is Kale, which comes out much later in the year. But Kale had a Part 2 LR, STR Super Buu. So this is basically where we are at now on JP, right? Instead of Kale, Topo came out as the April Dokkan Fest. And as we move into this part of the schedule, this is where we're speculating that Rosé could potentially come out. And this is what changes the timeline majorly for Global. Because those of you who probably remember, we have mentioned it a bunch of times at this point. But this time slot is where Frieza would come out. And then as we move into the beginning of June, we then get Super Buu. So basically, right before the anniversary, because of course then we go into July, and then that's when the anniversary actually kicks off. This time slot is basically JP's April Part 2 LR. So if JP does get Rosé next instead of a brand new unit, then that leaves this part of the schedule for Global open for something else, right? Because there now isn't a Part 2 LR from Topo's Celebration in order for us to get in this time slot. Now, there are a couple of options that they could go with, because remember, again, the goal is to try and catch up JP to Global as much as possible. Sorry, Global to JP as much as possible before the sync. Now, one thing to bear in mind, that we've talked about this briefly in other videos and stuff. Once the games are synced, what that means essentially is that the release schedule will just be the same for both versions of the game going forward when it comes to all the new releases. But they haven't said anywhere 100% that when the sync happens, Global will be fully caught up with JP. So there could still be instances, kind of like the physical Rosé release, where some content just kind of gets dropped in the middle of something else. And that leads us on to the real big thing that could then take the place of this Super Buu LR, or at least part of it, which of course then maybe could overlap with the anniversary, which I know for global players there's going to be a lot of stone temptation, because any ways that they can catch up or sync up to JP a lot of the time is going to involve more content dropping and quicker, which unfortunately means more things to want to summon on, which is kind of awkward. Because there are two options for this June part 2 kind of time slot. If JP got Rosé, so there's no brand new unit to get here, they could drop Topo, because of course then Topo's Celebration on JP didn't have a part 2 LR because they got Rosé, so Topo could fit in here right before the anniversary, and then going into the anniversary, Global would only be missing whatever came out in June, and of course the anniversary stuff itself, but then that's when the anniversary starts. So Topo fitting in here would be ideal, because his Celebration didn't end up having a part 2 LR, which means there's no part 2 to miss out on or to get pushed until after the anniversary. But the other big thing that we still have no idea how they're going to handle for Global is the TANABATA content, because on JP the TANABATA comes out at the end of June, which is of course when Global is then going to be going into the countdown and then the start of the anniversary. So for last year, that was LR Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku. And then what happens for Global, the timeline sadly hasn't been updated past, I think, worldwide. But if we look at Goku's actual page here on the wiki, his content comes out in November. Now, based on what we've been told about the projections for the sync, the games will be synced at this point. So, in fact, if we go back to the JP timeline and take a look at November 2023, in theory, what would happen then is that JP, we have the hero celebration kind of towards the end. I guess they must have had a unit drop right at the end of October, right? Yeah, it's like literally the last day of October. So what this would mean is that a new Dokkan Fest would be coming out right at the end of October, and then Global would then also get whatever JP's Tanabata content was a couple of days later, which would be obviously pretty crazy, a lot of resources. I mean, I guess it depends what the end of October / beginning of November Dokkan Fest was, and whether or not it was even worth summoning for, depending on who it is. But this would be a bit of a nightmare for Global, right? For this to then, the games be synced in terms of new stuff, but then the Tanabata thing still dropping in the same time slot for Global because we didn't get it at the same time because the games weren't synced yet. So that does open up the possibility that this could come as the thing right before the anniversary. But obviously that's kind of... imagine if, like, because when he first released... I've gone to the wrong month, haven't I? It's the end of June. When he released, LR Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku was really good. When they released, LR Vegeta and Trunks were really, really good. They were units that you ideally wanted to have, and the Tanabata unit doesn't usually come back for the first time until Saiyan Day, which is quite a long time to wait. So if they dropped this unit at the in the sort of like mid-June part, like the part 2 for coming out after Frieza for Global, that would be such a huge like bait banner right before the anniversary, because you know the unit is going to be designed for JP. That unit's going to be coming out like 2 weeks later, and that unit is ideally going to be good enough to handle the content that's out in the game at the time, which for JP is the anniversary content. So the Tanabata LR dropping right before the anniversary for Global would be such a massive bait banner, because the unit ideally would be something really good that if you pull them on Global, it's then going to help you massively with the Global anniversary content. Now, the one major problem with this, and why I think if they do drop Rose as the part 2 for Topo, I would probably lean more towards Topo coming out before the anniversary, because he doesn't have a part 2, whereas of course the Tanabata celebration does have a part 2. And on Global, we've always had this issue where these get split up, right? Remember how long it took for Global to get Omega? It didn't come out until like January or February on Global, which... again, as the goal is to move towards the sync, I guess they could have like the Tanabata LR part 1 drop before the anniversary, and then the part 2 drop like after the anniversary, or as like an EX part to the anniversary, maybe, because we want to be as much caught up as possible by worldwide as we can. But the worst case scenario for Global, especially when it comes to spending your stones, is if they drop the Tanabata LR right before the start of the anniversary, and then they just drop the part 2 of the Tanabata during the anniversary. Like, it could even be like a same time release as JP. Obviously, it means it would be a bigger gap between the part 1 and part 2 units, because Global would technically be getting the part 1 unit like 2 weeks before JP, and they could get the part 2 units at the same time. But that would be the 20th of July, which if we take a look back at the, if we take a look at the 8th anniversary, what were we at around the 20th of July? We were kind of in the middle. We got a couple of LRs. We had the part 2 units then came out like 5 days later. So imagine the Tanabata part 2 LR coming out like basically, what, a week or two between part 1 and part 2 of the anniversary banners. Like, if that part 2 LR for Tanabata was really good, I mean, if it was this previous year, right, and it was just Omega, it'd be kind of an easy skip for Global, especially right in the middle of the anniversary. But if that unit was actually good, that would be kind of a nightmare and make the anniversary have even more stuff that you need to summon for. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Rosé fitting into that time slot for JP does help out quite a lot because it's, you know, helping Global catch up a little bit. But it does create that issue of this kind of hole that is then left right before the anniversary for Global, because we no longer have this Part 2 LR to fill that final time slot. But Topo and all of his Easy A's and everything going in here, now that, you know, he doesn't have a Part 2 LR because JP got Rosé, that would actually line up really, really nicely. And then when we go into June, we'd obviously get Frieza. What would actually be really good, because, I mean, Frieza seems like a bit of an easy skip, but they could drop Frieza and then drop Part 1 and Part 2. Like, drop the whole Tanabata celebration just in June for Global to fill up the whole of June. And then we just have the countdown and then the anniversary in July. The only problem, again, like I said, that's a lot of stuff to want to summon on. But I could see them doing that maybe, is make all of June Tanabata for Global. So Global basically gets the Tanabata about a month before JP. And you could even squeeze Frieza in there as well, which would be a lot of content. I mean, most people would probably skip Frieza anyway, I think. But dropping the Tanabata before the anniversary, it makes sense for catching up the games, but it just kind of sucks from the player base perspective, right? Because you're going to be wanting to save your stones for the anniversary. People have since the start of the year. And, you know, if the Tanabata LR drops at the beginning of June on Global and is really, really good, people are going to want to summon for it and have to skip it because of the anniversary. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Will we see Rosé and his celebration coming out on JP soon? Obviously, we want to see Kefla and all that good stuff coming out on JP, but it does have some massive repercussions for the schedule, especially for Global. So let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.